Well, it's now my great pleasure to introduce our next speaker, Elisabeth Povinelli. Elisabeth is the Franz Boas Professor of Anthropology at Columbia University and the author of many books, Labor's Lot, The Cunning of Recognition, The Empire of Love, and Economies of Abandonment. And to continue the list Cornelia Parker started at the beginning of the marathon, The Economies of Abandonment is a very urgent book in relation to the preparation and all the topics here of this marathon. For today, Elisabeth will be presenting a talk entitled The Three Figures of Extinction. Please give a very warm welcome to Elisabeth Povinelli.
Extinction. Its meaning is as clear as water and as weighty as gravity. Oh, sorry. But it's a concept, not a fact, whose meaning emerged, as did its affects, in the science of the 18th and 19th century. It's a concept, moreover, dependent on other concepts, such as the concept of species and populations. A species, we know, is a biological concept. Species is one of the basic units of biological classification and taxonomic rank. Species, as a classification, ranks below genus, which ranks below family, which ranks below order, and onwards and backwards and up and into the highest biological class, life, whose opposition is not death, but non-life, a geological concept. A population, as we know, is all of one species living in the same geographical area, and here we find a tactic of power, of governance, of governmentality. You choose the word. A tactic that depends on this concept of life, but whose opposite is now not non-life, but death. A tactic which also emerged with this science of species and populations in the 18th and the 19th century, which is now wrapped around another concept, that of biopower, a concept given life by the French historian Michel Foucault, whose meanings and tactics and figures and discourse we all now know by heart. We know, for instance, that biopower hides its way of killing through a discourse of life, of making live, a discourse that tells us to be normal, to be healthy, to be vital, to live well, to thrive, to strive toward thriving, and allows those who do not strive to thrive or in striving exhaust themselves and die. It allows them their death. And it doesn't waste time killing them unless it must in secret detention centers that stimulate drowning and simulate it, and simulate dying through drowning, a fact that this form of biopower, a fact of biopower that is as clear and is as weighty as this water and this gravity. And we know that this form of power has four figures and four strategies and four discourses. And we also know these four figures and strategies and discourses by heart: the Malthusian couple, the hysterical woman, the masturbating child, and the perverse adult. So extinction, it's a concept dependent on other concepts, on species, on population, on life, on non-life, that produces other concepts, biology and geology, for instance, and produces modes and tactics of power that produce social figures, that produce other concepts. And without these concepts, without species, without population, without life, without non-life, there is no distinction, there is no extinction, there's no maths or final death. Note to self, this does not mean I will live forever, or human beings will live forever, or people will not die, or experience simulated death by water, I won't, you won't, we won't, they will. That's also as clear as water and as weighty as gravity. We were absent and will be gone. Absent and gone. They will be tortured and let die. And then they will be absent and gone. It does mean that life and non-life disappear if these concepts disappear. As does population, as does species, as does extinction, its modalities of power, and its affects. The Anthropocene, the Meteorocene, or climate change, if you wish. Geology and meteorology have given us some very terrifying golden spikes as of late. They had already given us, as we just saw, a spike for the emergence of life, way, way, way back in the Precambrian period, where we saw the emergence of bacteria and cyanobacteria and protozoa, and is now coupled, though, with the radical absence of life in the way, way, way future, don't worry, the post-Anthropocene, when the Earth becomes Mars, or maybe is simply absorbed into the sun. When Earth becomes something that had, but is now denuded of life. Fine, right? Who cares? Long way off, I won't be here. But geology and meteorology, the Anthropocene and the Meteorocene, climate change, is also giving us these terrifying spikes, this concept, this anxiety, this marathon of extinction. But it is giving us these terrifying spikes that give us not merely population extinction, not merely the extinction of a species, say humans, but the extinction of life itself as a concept. And may also have given us a new golden spike, the death of the difference between life and non-life, and thus life and death. And thus, in giving us the death of extinction itself, a kind of meta-extinction that occurs when life itself becomes extinct. And so it makes a difference that makes no difference. What do I mean? Take life, take non-life. In the Anthropocene and the Meteorocene, in the far, far future, which we saw, where nothing exists of life. In geology and meteorology, and how they are in twin, and this is what I want to look at, devouring their friend biology, geology, meteorology. For if we look at where and how life began, and how and why it might end, then how can I separate life from non-life? Life's not a miracle. Life's not the dynamic as opposed to the inert of rocky substance, of geochemical commotion, but non-life is what holds, or should for us, the more radical potential. For it's non-life that created what it's radically not, life. And will in time fold this extension of itself back into itself, as it's already done so often and long before, will fold the extension of life back into its geological strata and rocky being, and where life becomes nothing more than it was at the beginning, a sedimentary substance, a kind of rock composed of the detritus of life as well as minerals, and with the help of water and gravity, cement them back together. Whereas life, all it can do is fall into what it already was. That is, it falls back into where it began, which is non-life. And thus is life devoured as a concept and affect and anxiety from a geological perspective under the pressure of the Anthropocene. And from the Meteorocene, from climate change, life is just another internal organ of a planet who will still be here when life is not, when we are not. A planet that's still undergoing its unfolding processes, creating who knows what, maybe those giant squid, or whether life will be a relevant concept. Like the squid, it might be something that's somewhat aspirational. But in any case, non-life will be freed from being coupled with life's anxiety, death. Freed from being non-life. Non-life will be something like a Regulai might have said about sex before, female sex before, the feminine. That is, non-life will be freed from being the other of the same. Non-life will be freed from being life's other and freed to finally be the other of the other itself. And yet, of course, we cling to life and non-life, and thus the drama of death. We can't have death without this distinction. In the geological boundaries with biology, we hear, and it's true, that biochemical activities create their geochemical environment, and vice versa. And thus we are creating a geo-biochemical soup that is eating us alive. And we hear in critical thought, under the pressure of the Meteorocene and the Anthropocene, from our new vitalist friends, that we need to forget about life and non-life. Of course, these are irrelevant. And instead, we need to think about objects and their arrangements, assemblages. We need to think about Gaia and her breathing, her carbon cycles. Fine, good, fine. But once again, life becomes nothing, or merely an extension of non-life, because it remains within any it remains within any assemblage, which remains, after all, in its absence, satellites circling around Earth to become Mars. So, do we need life? Its difference, to have extinction, to be anxious about extinction, to care about extinction, the extinction of a population, of a species, of a genus, of an orders, and upwards and over and in and hill and dale, even if we do care really about the ways, when we don't care really about the ways we are killing as we fly over to this conference and waterboard people elsewhere. What a mess. And what wonder that as this mess emerges, as the concept extinction shakes and shudders and liquefies under the pressure of these other concepts, the Anthropocene, the Meteorocene, climate change, that have themselves shaken and liquefied, perhaps, our ability to say, what difference does the difference between life and non-life make? From a planetary perspective, from time. And yet, a distinction on which we so desperately depend and cling. What wonder, then, that some of us think that biopower is now over, is now a minor chord, that the internal rock reveals a very different power emerging around us. We can hear, like a fading bird, perhaps something we could call deontological power, with new figures and new problems and new discourses that do not solve the problem of how we and what we do with the distinction between life and non-life, that gives us death, that gives us extinction, but rather stage the problem in a new way. 3 figures, not 4, the desert, the animist, the virus. These won't produce life everywhere. They won't produce non-life everywhere. What they do is stage the problem of a division in 3 different ways. The desert tells us, here's a place that is denuded of life, but could have it again. The animist tells us, don't worry about non-life, everything's life. The virus says, it's a difference that makes no difference.